Hey, my cheapsy peepsies. Nice to have you aboard again for a brilliant video. We're going to talk about Atlantis what the name means in Northern Europe. Because we're talking 10,000 BC according to Plato. Firstly, just a quick community service announcement for those who want to help me out. So I've started a Doc Charles eBay, and it's already got like nearly 100 items because I've been busy. I've noticed some of my books are actually quite valuable, some of them not really valuable, some are common. But it depends whether you can sell it or not for those prices based on what the other booksellers are saying. But you know, if you're in Australia and you want to help me out, just go for it. You can even some of them are quite reasonably priced compared to other sellers, so you can even put in an offer or whatever. I've, as you see, only one sold another one today. Some Osborne. But the problem is it's not letting me do international yet. So the problem is actually all the international books from USA, they're all like $50 postage from USA. So it's the same case if I'm sending to USA. When I was sending you autographed copies of Confessions of the Gods in 2017, I was paying like $30 postage, and you were paying that as well. And I was sometimes taking a hit on that. Sometimes you were paying that as well. So there's actually 3 autographed copies of that in here as well. So if you're in Australia, you can achieve the distinction of an autographed copy from yours truly. I tell you what, there we go. So let's get back to the video. And I will have an Etsy as well. Unbelievable, selling precious antiquities from the distant past. But anyway, let's get to this one first. Well, hello my lovelies, how you doing? And let's talk about this. So this is not what you think it is. You think this is called Atlantis. This is not called Atlantis. This is called it could be closer to Atum, although he's not similar to Atlas. He is an Egyptian version of something similar. He had a primordial mound surrounded by water. And we have to look at what the Egyptians called this, because they were transliterating out of what the people of 10,000 years ago were supposedly calling it, some island in the Atlantic. We know that the water levels did indeed go up after 10,000 years, matching the story. Let's get into the derivations of Atlantis. What does it actually mean, Atlantic? What does this all mean? And the name Atlantis is a Greek genitive feminine singular, and it means of Atlas. That's right. It means of Atlas. So this is what is of Atlas. In other words, Plato is saying that Solon was saying that the Atlanteans were saying that they named their island of Atlas or an equivalent deity. Let's get to what this means. Okay. In other words, what we're trying to say is actually this is not the name of the island. It is a Greek genitive of Atlas. Okay, let's continue. Let's continue. So good. So, in ancient Greek, Plato used the word Atlantis Nessos. I'm not sure if that's pronounced Nessos or Nessos as a Spanish do, to refer to the fictional island of Atlantis. This translates to Island of Atlas. Okay, fascinating. Okay, and he actually, but then it's not just used in conjunction with the word Nessos, which means island. It's also used on its own in the text, is what I'm saying. So it actually means that of Atlas, that thing of Atlas, that thing that Atlas created, this primordial, ancient. It's like an Earth origin myth, which is combined with a geographical myth, which is interesting. So in ancient Greek, Atlas, and we should study this, is a third declension noun, meaning its singular, genitive singular form is Atlantos. So this would be the masculine, the feminine would be Atlantis, possibly. The nominative singular is Atlas. So Atlas is the original word, not Atlantis, okay? And we only get words like Atlantis because that is how the Greek language turns it into a genitive or ownership. The dative dative means if you're giving it to someone, then you're giving it to the Atlanti. And the accusative means there's a nominative and an accusative. So that means Atlas is doing something to to the accusative. So Atlanta. So Atlanta is the accusative. Okay. Let's continue. So here's the thing, guys. You're wrong about Atlantis. It cannot have been called that. And Plato says it was not called that. And the Egyptians told him it was not called that. You'll see why. It's not called that, but we're analysing where it comes from. It comes from Atlas, the god Atlas. And we're going to analyse what the god Atlas is. It's a water god. A primordial water god who created the world. Now, the closest Egyptian god to Atlas is possibly, there are a few of them, but it's possibly Atum. And Atum had a primordial mound surrounded by water. He's possibly in the Bible as Adam. Also, you could call him Tom if you want. Although Atlas is not a water god, that's true. He is, because he has an ocean named after him. Atlantis, his land, was full of canals, and canals ringing the fortress hill citadel. And what was there? It was the temple of Poseidon, the water god. So it's water, water, water. This island was obsessed with water. Atlas has relations to Egyptian. What is the root of all this? The root is water. The root of Atlas may be water because of the AT. Uat-ur. And this is quite interesting. We see this also in Europe, Central Europe, the Oder River. And it is thought that Oder is basically, it's a word similar to water. Oder, utter, water, and then Atla. But it's also similar to Nut. Nut holds up the sky, is similar to Atlas. We see, and I believe that's an old Germanic nude. She's always depicted as a nude. Carries around a round jug as well, like an Atlas globe on top of her head, full of water. And Atlas, when you look at him, he was also associated as a technology god, and that is simply because he it looks like he's underground because he's carrying the earth above him. And we know that the underground god is the banished god, is the fallen angel who was banished underground in Germanic mythology and other mythologies, with hell. So, forget about old land, because when you do that is when you decline it. It's not land, it's not necessarily old land like the Aurelia manuscript, although I like that manuscript and I believe it contains some truths. I think they might be wrong about it being alt land because of all this. So Shu is a man, Nut a daughter, but they have a kind of similar thing because Shu was holding up the sky in ancient Egyptian. And by the way, why are we looking at all this? Tell me, why are we looking at all this? Because it's from the Egyptian records, but we'll get to this. We have to look at what the Egyptians called all the Atlas, you know. So Nut has many of the same. So Nut holds apart. Shu holds apart Nud, the sky, and Geb, the earth, but Nut has the same properties. Also, Atum is close to Atlas. Atum is a min-like god because he played with himself to create the first couple, which is Shu, a man, and in English this could be she, Shane, Sean, or Hugh. Because I keep pointing out again and again that there are so many Germanic words in ancient Egyptian that it defies the imagination. And you're going to say, Charles, I don't like that because you're not following Wikipedia. Guys, if I was going to follow Wikipedia, why would I have an ancient mystery channel? If I was not allowed to have my own opinions, why would I have an ancient mystery channel? Explain that to me. Why would I do that? So the nasty trolls, go watch, I don't know, SpongeBob. That's what I used to say. Go watch SpongeBob because your brain's a little sponge. That's why. So Tefnut, similar to Daphne in English, is the daughter. He made this holy couple of Shu and Tefnut. And he seems to be in the Bible, but reduced from a god to a man, because Adam is also a fallen angel who seems to be, he was in heaven and then thrown out. And I believe we get autumn from Adam. And you're going to say, that's interesting. It looks like it was called Haer-Fest or Harvest before the 1600s in the Germanic countries. But then we became very pro-Latin in the 1600s, and everyone wanted to learn Latin and speak in Latin, and they only wrote all the science books in Latin to show how clever they were, because all these people are smarty pantsers with an incredible ego. So we can't read their books now because no one speaks Latin anymore, and it's very hard. It takes decades to translate one book. But it's interesting because when you have autumn, you have a cold westerly wind from the Atlantic, And in Egyptian, Atum is associated with the setting sun, the west. So it's associated with the Atlantic Ocean. And is this where the Greeks got Atlas from Atum? And we've found in previous videos that the Greeks like to keep the original sound in their translations if appropriate, but would also not hesitate to translate the word into something understandable to their readers, thus losing the original meaning. So the Greeks seem to have shared mythology with the Egyptians, because why do they call the ocean the Sea of Atlas? Possibly independently of Plato's story. They call it the Atlantikos. Why? Were they getting it from Plato's story, or were they just calling it that anyway? And that's interesting. And if there was an Atlantis, it wasn't called that because of this. And the citizens of this city were called Atlanteans, and the city itself was called Atlantis, and the name of the whole island was Atlantis. But as for the names, Solon said they were translated by the Egyptian priests into the Egyptian tongue. In other words, the Egyptians may have gone to Britain, or Britons went to them, or Atlanteans went to them. They heard the story, they were refugees in Egypt possibly, and the Egyptians have over 10,000 years retranslated it into their gods. In other words, they were translated from stories from the Egyptian records held for 9,000 years. For, said the priest, there have been and will be again many destructions of mankind arising out of many causes, and the greatest have been brought about by the agencies of fire and water, and other lesser ones by innumerable other causes. And he talks about the story of Phaeton, which is a kind of comet having yoked the steeds of his father's chariot. But in our temples we have preserved from the earliest times a written record of the history of the world, which clearly shows the greatest and most severe of the destructions of mankind, which have left survivors only in the mountains, hence they know about the Noah story. And they actually say these take place at intervals of 12,000 years. Now this tells me a couple things. All right, remember our video about planetary cosmology. And the planetary cosmology in Persia goes back to about 30,000 BC when they say the Earth was created, which sounds a lot like the bombardments in America, the Carolina Bays, because that's from about that time. But they would know about 12,000 year intervals if they had records going back to that time, or more likely if their planetary cosmologists, their priests, such as Gizamp, who in Persia, example, who was the prophet of the three wise men, they were his mere disciples who went to find Jesus. If they were actually predicting these things in advance and they said, look, there seems to be a pattern every 12,000 years, something happens. It's about the duration of our Holocene as well. And the last destruction, which occurred 9,000 years ago, was brought about by the gods who were angry at the wickedness of men. And the events that took place in those days, and the greatest of all the calamities that have befallen the world, are recorded in our sacred books. And the priest is speaking of the most ancient of our own citizens, and said the city of Athens was in existence 9,000 years ago, and not 9,000 less 100. He's saying, but 9,000 full years. So they have it down to, what he's saying is, they have it down to this must be some Greek slang, they have it down to the exact year. And in fact, Athens is literally named after Atum as well. So it must have been seen as a city where the world started at one time. And it's very similar to the word Atlantis as well. Well, Atlantean's Germanic, because the Atlantic is literally the home of Germans. So if so, guess what? There are lots of gods in Germanic which sound like, which are the same as Atlas. And these were transliterated into Egyptian and then into Greek. So Ymir, or we could even say Omar, the primordial giant who held up the sky in Norse mythology. Heimdall, the god who guarded the Bifrost Bridge and was said to hold up the sky in some myths. Or Vili and Ve, the Aesir gods along with Ve held up the sky after Umar's demise. However, the most similar figure, this is from AI, to Atlas is Hrungnir, a giant who is said to hold up the sky similar to Atlas. So Atlantis, or ancient UK, that's what I think it is, was once named after one of these gods according to Egyptian sources. In other words, we're not even looking at the right name. It could have been called Imirland, Heimdallland, Vili-Ve-land, or Hrungnirland. And these names would have been shuffled and changed over 10,000 years. So these might not have even been the gods of holding up the sky 10,000 years ago. That might have been different names, different gods, because they shuffle around. Oh, incredible. Yeah, there it is. So we're showing that the Uat-ur it looks like the same root as At, or Atlantis, or even Atum. And it comes from Adra, which means flowing. Look, why don't you just say water, seriously, because it's Uat-ur, water. Water is closer than this hypothetical Proto-Indo-European Adra. Give me a break. These people are unbelievable. Voda. Voda. Okay. So Shu is a male god. And Shu is another version. It's a bit different to Atum. He's more specifically a... and you have to understand, every city had their own versions of every god, which had different attributes. So there was no Egyptian pantheon or anything like that. It went by the city. And each city even had similar gods with slightly different attributes. So everything gets mixed up like a soup. We're talking Hungarian goulash. We're talking like a real soup. You might even use your food processor. We're talking a real soup. Everything's really mixed up. Anyway, you see similar properties to Atlas. He's holding up the world, and see how it mixes up. He's also that master of the beasts or whatever as well, with the two Daniel in the lion's den as well. Looks like he's about to be crucified as well. You know, that's almost literally Jesus, isn't he? Just look at him. Incredible. And a cooling, calming influence. Wearing an ostrich feather. Fog and clouds were his elements and were called his bones. And he was known as the wind. Fascinating, fascinating. And is associated with Atlas. There we go. Was Atlantis called Shuland? And about this Ymir giant, I actually do wonder how much they knew about the megafauna, the dinosaurs in the ground, because out of Ymir's flesh was fashioned the earth and the ocean, out of his blood, out of his bones the hills. We're in mud fossil territory. Of his hair the trees, of his skull the heavens high, Mifgar for the gods from his eyebrows made, and for the sons of men, and out of his brain the baleful clouds they made to move on high. That's Ymir the giant who held up the world. And Villian Veil, of course, as well. Villian Veil. Right, fascinating. So what happened was when Ymir died, they took over. So just to make sure it was all good again. One thing about, Egyptian Nut and all this, she's holding up the sky from one end to another, yet there's only one pillar. So that means there's two pillars, but there's only one pillar in the Greek myths, which is fascinating. And that's at the Atlas Mountains. That's the pillar. Now, it seems to me there must be another pillar. What is this other pillar? Is it Jerusalem? Is it Gaza? Is it Baalbek? And this must have been in the earlier mythology. So we're looking for another pillar somewhere else. If someone knows where the pillar, let's talk about it. Guys, cheerio. That was fun. Wasn't that fun? Lots of these people will be having mindgasms now that I'm doing this. I mean, that's unbelievable. Anyway. That's not the end of the video. I don't know what's going on with UBS, but that's a joke, so I'm just filming the screen again. But we're going to look at the Egyptian sources now. So look at that. The word for salt or soda water is actually mud. So we're looking at the Germanic words, Germanic intrusion, loan words into ancient Egypt, as we've mentioned. English loan words into ancient Egypt, when English didn't even exist, apparently. According to some. Oops. Let's look at a similar word where they possibly got Atlas from. So, according to ancient Egyptian, the word for sea, I'd like you to pronounce that. Pronounce that, please. Do it now. The word for sea is water. So another Germanic loan word into ancient Egypt. And here was a word for sea. So the word water, and we could have had Atla, Atra. So we know that R and L flip over. So Atra, Atur, Atra, Atla. And the Greeks heard this and they heard Atlas. And it was conveniently on the edge of the world where the pillars were. Hence they thought, oh, that must be the Greek Atlas. That's probably what the Egyptians are talking about when they say water, or the sea, or possibly even the ocean. So there's another one. Let's get into it. So Uat-ur seems to be the Wallace Budge version of Uat-ur. Now it's done as water, but in his dictionary it's Uat-ur, and the great green water, i.e. the ocean. Now that's interesting. So this is in an Egyptian source. We obviously don't have Sonchus's source here. Some trolls might say, you know, what are you doing, Charlie? That's not the Egyptian source. You misled me with a thumbnail, Charles. You need to go back in time with your time machine. So I stopped spinning on you, Charlie. You know, that's how they are. But anyway, so there we go. Uat-ur, Mediterranean Sea, or the Great Celestial Sea, the water. Wachra, so Watla. So here we go. Wachra, Watla, Atlas. A goose with a green beak. In other words, the moon god, a kind of moon god, possibly. Yeah, maybe a bit of a Thoth, maybe. Moon, water, all similar. And in fact, I see in the ancient Egyptian dictionary also that the name of the sea is another word for it, Iam, which is very similar to Iyah or Yahweh. So it's associated with the moon as well. Wachat, watch, a stick, a twig, a pillar, or a support column. Two pillars connected. So again, we're seeing the Greek pillars. So the Greeks ask them all these definitions. What does it mean? Well, it means pillars, it means sea. And watch it. Again, a hall with pillars, a colonnade, a stela. So water, it means pillars, and it means ocean, and it means Mediterranean Sea. That's not a coincidence. This is how the Greeks fathomed this was called Atlas, and this was which was also the pillars, also called after the ocean. They thought, that's what the Egyptians are talking about. So here it is, literally. And we see it as and the Greeks may not have known, because it is different in Greek. They don't have a word similar to water. This is a Germanic loanword. It's a Slav word, and it's in ancient Egyptian. Can you explain that without showing that it's a loanword, which is what it is? Clearly it is. So hope you've enjoyed that very much. That's where we get the word Atlas or Atlantis. Share this video, because no one's making, let's face it, no one's making videos like this. Come on, people. Share it. Oh, no. Okay, bye.